Alright, for this video we're going to be talking about wrenches. So we're going to start off with what is referred to as the C-wrench. So this is an adjustable C-wrench, kind of a basic theatrical tool. This is one of the tools that everybody should just own. Every single human in existence should own a C-wrench. So it's got an adjustable little wheel. You spin the wheel. Notice I'm doing it with the thumb on the back so you can see what's happening. You spin the wheel and it adjusts it smaller or wider. They sell these based off of their length. So this is an 8-inch C-wrench, so it depends on how big the handle is. Typically, the bigger the handle, also the wider the jaw, the smaller, the narrower the jaw. Not always 100% accurate, but for the most part. These are designed for tightening or loosening bolts. Right? So you get a bolt, stick it in there, tighten it, turn the bolt, turn the bolt. One thing to know is that clockwise, let's see if I can do this correctly, right? Clockwise, am I doing it the right way? Yep. Clockwise is tightening, or righty-tighty as people will say. Counterclockwise is loosening, lefty-loosey. Right, so to turn it clockwise, you tighten the bolt. To turn it counterclockwise, you loosen the bolt. That is true 98% of the time. There are times that you will encounter a counter-threaded bolt, which means to tighten it, you have to turn it to the left. It's not very common, but in plumbing, in certain applications, you will find that there are bolts that work opposite. Just know that that is the case. And if you think about it, the problem is if you're on top of it, to tighten it, the bolt on top goes to the right, but the nut on the bottom you have to spin to your left because it's spinning clockwise in its orientation. Hope that didn't just confuse every single person. All right, so C-wrench, called a C-wrench because the original company that made it is the Crescent wrench. Crescent is the brand. Some people will refer to all of these as Crescent wrenches. That's technically inaccurate. There is a brand of Crescent, right? And they invented the C-wrench, or they have Crescent wrench, and everybody else is like, oh, I can make that too, and they called it the C-wrench. So this next one is an open-ended box wrench. So technically a box wrench is closed on both ends. This is a double open-ended box wrench. So it has two different stationary wrenches that you can use. This one is a 12 millimeter, this one's a 14 millimeter, so that you can grab it and tighten as a wrench. Next, we're going to go to the open-ended box wrench. Right? So it's a box wrench because it's got a circle on one side and it is open-ended. So on these, typically these are both the same size. So this side and this side are the same size. They're not different sizes. This particular one is a 15 millimeter. Here in the shop we've got a good mix of standard and metric. Depends on what you're buying, right? So a lot of things that come from out of country are in metric because the rest of the world uses the metric system, and stuff that you buy that's American made is standard, so we have to have both. Open-ended box wrench. Now we're going to add another layer on. This is a ratcheting open-ended box wrench, right? So it looks very similar to the open-ended box wrench we just saw, except for it has a ratcheting feature. So we can see that this turns, there you go. Right, and so it's designed that I can stick this onto a nut or a bolt and I can turn it without having to take it off. So it ratchets around it. Some of them are designed so that they only have one direction. So if you want to loosen, you have to flip it. These particular ones have a little button, a little toggle switch that allows you to change whether or not you are tightening or loosening. Ratcheting open-ended box wrench. All right, this is a socket wrench, right? So this is the socket, right? So these change the size depending on the bolt that you are tightening, and this is the actual socket wrench. A couple things, typically there's a button on the back of them. I don't know if I can get this in the video. There is a bearing right here, and when you push the button that allows the bearing to go in, and when you let the button go, the bearing pops out. So what the bearing does is it helps hold the socket on there. It's not perfect, but it gives a little bit more tension. So sometimes if you're ever dealing with a socket wrench, if you can't get the socket off, you gotta find that button and push the button and it helps the socket come off. There's a couple of different ways they accomplish this, but there's always a way to change the direction. Right, so currently right now, this is loosening bolts. Switch the toggle switch to the other direction, and that allows me to tighten bolts. These come in all varieties of sizes, shapes, specialty tips. More or less they work exactly the same. Socket wrench. Now this behemoth is a little bit different and is special. this is a torque wrench. Not typically necessary for us. Typically it's an automotive tool. There are a couple of things in rigging where you have to use a torque wrench. You need to get the specific amount of torque for it to be safe. And the way this works is the handle has a torque setting. So as you loosen the handle, you can see, you probably can't read it, but there's writing and markings here. So this is currently set at 16.6 meter kilograms. Oh, here we go. Those are foot-pounds. 110 foot-pounds. Right, so basically what it's saying is how much pressure are you putting on that object when you're tightening. Right, so you tighten it, and at a certain point, this will no longer allow you to tighten it anymore. It has reached its torque capacity, similar to the drill that we saw in an earlier video. Again, not necessary for most of the things that we do, but it's a tool that we have, and it's something that's important for you to know what it is and why it is that way. For the rest of it, it just works like a normal socket wrench, right? You put a socket on there, whatever size you need. It's got a little toggle switch on the back that changes whether or not you're tightening or you're loosening. Torque wrench. All right, last one is referred to as a pipe wrench or a monkey wrench. So the way that these work is there's a little dial on the back, and the dial helps the wrench open or close. These are specifically designed for tightening pipes. So if you notice, the teeth have a directionality to them. So the bottom teeth kind of go straight up and down, but the top teeth angle in. So the reason that is that these are not bi-directional, right? So if you put a pipe inside of this, it is designed to tighten towards the handle. So as you push the handle down, the teeth in the top grab into the pipe. And if you lift the handle, it will loosen on the pipe, so the teeth will let go. Right? So this is only designed to go one direction. If you want to turn the pipe the other direction, you have to flip the pipe wrench and do it the other side, which is really good, and it's designed that way on purpose. It's not an accident. So if you're using two pipe wrenches to tighten a connection, one pipe wrench needs to be on one side and the other pipe wrench needs to be on the other side to really get it tightened. Popularized by BioShock. If anybody played that game, it's one of the first weapons that you get. They're big, they're heavy, they're kind of unwielding, but they really grab onto a pipe very well. One thing to note is that they will mar your pipe. So they'll leave little teeth mark in your pipe, so it's not something you want to do if you're ever doing something aesthetic. These are really just designed for down, dirty plumbing jobs. Tightening things that you don't really need to be audience facing or somebody's going to touch, because it will leave marks in your steel. All right, that's it for the wrenches. Thanks everybody. Look forward to the next video.